Yeah, you're live.
Okay. All right, we're back. As promised yesterday, I told you that we were going to come on today again and do another cooking demo to make this honey whole wheat bread, which is what we used in our croutons yesterday in the onion soup. And before we get started, I just want to say, Milford, had no idea that you missed us so much. Big shout out. I'm so glad we did this. I'm really happy that people were at home and this brought inspiration to others who wanted to make that soup yesterday. I know there was a lot of excitement about bread, so we're going to get into that today with this loaf of bread. I got up early this morning because bread takes a really long time. It's about a 3-hour process from start to finish. That means from, getting your yeast going to getting the loaf of bread out of the oven. So I just took this loaf of bread out of the oven. And you can see that, it has great shape, beautiful color. When it comes out of the oven and it's a little bit warm, you want to just tilt it on the side like this, and it'll pull away if it's properly cooked. When you're testing it in the oven, you're going to tap on it for this hollow feeling. And I just wanted to demonstrate that now while this one was warm, but I'll go back over it as we go through the steps. So this loaf of bread I've been making a long time. Everybody asks me for my recipes all the time. Oh, my cat's going to help. Nosy cat is going to help.
Come on.
People ask me for my recipes all the time, and this is why I can't share my recipes, because there's no directions. They're just ingredients. A lot of times they look like this because I've spilled stuff on it when I'm working, but those are some of the ones that I used in the restaurant and I use at home all the time. And then this is the one that we're going to use today for the wheat bread. I will post the ingredients on my YouTube channel, and we'll get a link going for that for you, so that you could try and make this. But you're going to have to use the technique that I show you here with this recipe, because there's so many variables in making bread that you just can't say, this is exactly the amount. The air could be different. The temperature can be different. The yeast can be cold. The flour can be dry. It could be humid in your house. It could be cold in your house. Of course, I picked today to make bread, and usually you put it in a sunny, warm spot to proof. We didn't have that, so I'll show you a trick that I did to get that going today. But I'm just going to get started with it. But John's just going to go over, these are 4 books that I have in my house. This Ultimate Bread is like a bread Bible. They really cover everything from types of flours to mixers to recipes to sweet breads, leavened breads, unleavened breads. The Baker's Manual is a Culinary Institute tried and true model. This boulangerie is great. It's a life and times of a French pastry chef, and it kind of goes over what they do in a day-to-day operation, and then it gives you some recipes. And then of course there's Beard on Bread, he's the king of bread and pasta and everything food related. So get yourself a copy of Beard on Bread, check it out. I don't think you can get it out of the library right now, but maybe some of them are available online. But those are just a few that I've kept over the years that I really always go back to. All right. So a yeasted leavened bread. You need to use 1.5 cups of warm water. This is going to make 1 loaf. Usually I make this whole recipe and make 2 loaves at a time. 1.5 cups of warm water. And what's warm? Warm is below 110 degrees because the yeast is going to proof at 100 degrees. Now this particular recipe is going to make a little sponge first, and I'll explain what that is. So it's 1.5 cups of warm water, then 2 teaspoons of yeast. I guess people are hoarding yeast like they're hoarding toilet paper, so it might be hard to find in the grocery store right now. I know Restaurant Depot has it. This was about a 2-pound package of yeast from Restaurant Depot. John's saying it's 3 pounds.
No, $3.
Oh, for $3. 2 pounds for $3. So you just want to mix up a little bit your yeast and your water. And then this is going to be, the whole recipe is going to take 1/3 of a cup of honey, but in this first sponge, we just put half of it. And now this is going to act as the sugar that your yeast feeds off of, because yeast needs to eat sugar to grow. So the next thing that's going to go in here is going to be 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We got ours at the depot. Another good place to look up for bread recipes is kingarthur.com. They have a really great website, and they kind of give very basic instructions on how to make simple, basic breads. So this is like a sponge yeast activation, and ideally you want to let this sit for half an hour, and you'll see it like bubbling yeast. You can kind of see it bubbling right down here. That's the yeast growing and blooming. So to make this sponge thing, you let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then you come back to it and you add the remainder of the ingredients. So let's just pretend that that's at for 30 minutes, because you guys aren't going to want to watch me for 30 minutes. And then the next thing that goes into this is 1.5 tablespoons of melted butter. So this is 1.5 tablespoons of melted butter, and 1 3/4 cup of whole wheat flour. Here's our whole wheat flour right here. I'll measure it off. 1 3/4 cup. Then the remaining honey, the other half of your 1/3 cup honey. I don't use our honey from the hives when I make this, because you won't really taste the honey flavor. The honey's just acting as a sugar, and I don't like to waste our precious honey on that. So again, well, Restaurant Depot.
They need to know that you're a beekeeper.
Yeah, if you don't know us, we are beekeepers. We do sell our honey. We probably won't have any until June of this year, but we will keep you posted on that as well. Then the last thing that you want to add is half tablespoon of salt. So that's 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Now you don't want to get the salt to touch the yeast quite yet, because that salt is one thing that will stop the yeast from growing. So now I just go in with my hand and I start mixing it. And yes, I washed my hands before I did this. I could already tell that this is wet and it was very warm. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more flour. I could hear it and I could feel it. And that's the thing, is you want to add it a little bit at a time. I can feel this too. You want to add it a little bit at a time, because you can't take it back out. You can always add it in, but you can't take it back out. And that's a really important thing to remember with bread baking. So I'm going to eventually take this to the table to knead it, but I don't want it to be this sticky on the table. All right. And you kind of turn this wet part down below so it picks up the dry flour that kind of got left on the bottom. And you want to keep getting it off your hand too, because that is part of your recipe there. Just a little bit more flour. And you work it from the edges to the middle. All right, it's starting to be more of a ball and a little bit less sticky. I'm going to be able to go to the counter. All right. So if you have a granite countertop, it's great. Otherwise, you could use a breadboard or a cutting board. This counter was cleaned prior to me doing this, so in case anybody out there wants to know. All right, and what you do now is you're going to activate the yeast and the gluten in the flour. And this is what's going to give your bread the structure. That's going to wake up the little yeasties so that they develop and bloom. And when they eat the sugar and feed on the flour, they start to give off the gas. And the gas is what makes your bread rise. This is a leavened bread. We can go on later and talk more another day about like sweet breads that use baking soda as a leavening agent. And at the end of this demonstration, I'm going to show a little bit on sourdough starter, which is a way to make bread if you don't have yeast, by harvesting the yeast that's already in the air around you. So it's still a little bit wet. So you can just keep going. It shouldn't stick to my hands like this. Okay, so you're pulling the edges into the middle, and eventually you're going to develop a really smooth outside dough ball. And it's not, I'm not like massively kneading this. I'm just working it from the edge to the middle, round and around. And I'm trying to get this like nice, round, smooth ball. And then what you're going to do with that is put it back. You kind of want to scrape this stuff off the side so it doesn't stick on it. And you could use some of the butter to grease your bowl inside here. Sometimes I wash it, but done enough dishes this week, I'm all set. So then you put your dough inside this bowl, and you're going to want to put a clean linen napkin over the top of it so it doesn't dry out. And ideally you would put this in a sunny spot. in the house. But today that's not happening. So what I did was I turned my oven on and I got the top of the oven warm and I set this dough on top of the oven, not in it, on top of it. And then I turned the oven off afterwards. So that's an hour of proofing that dough. And what it's going to do is it's going to double in size and you're going to have this beautiful thing. So I made this about an hour and a half ago. It takes from 60 to 90 minutes, depending upon the conditions in the house, for the dough to rise. And what you do is you turn this out onto your surface and you have to knead it again because you have to wake up the yeast. And this is the second proof that's going to give you the nice tight crumb structure and that beautiful dome shape that I was able to achieve on that loaf right there. Again, I'm rolling it to get the air out of it, to develop the gluten, to get the yeast going again. And then I'm going to form it. So you could, if you want, do free form and just put it like this on a pizza stone, but I'm going to do this in a loaf pan. So to do a loaf pan, you do this like rolling, where you're bringing the edges and the ends to the middle and rolling it so you're going to get a nice tight loaf. That's going to avoid having like air bubbles, air holes in it. Then I just go ahead and spray my pan lightly with any kind of pan spray, Restaurant Depot, and pick up my loaf and lay it inside here. Now, like the dough that we made before, you need to cover this with a cloth and stick it somewhere to rest until it doubles. And on this one, what you're going to see is it won't be quite this high. It'll be twice the size of this, but that end puff there happened when it was in the oven. So you'll see it on the cloth. You'll see that it'll come up to about this high, but it'll really get the rounded feel when it goes in the oven. So this guy goes to get double proofed as well. I'm just gonna quick rinse my hand. Wait, 1 second. All right, and wash my hands. So the next step to that, once this was proofed high enough, would be to preheat your oven to 375 degrees and take the loaf of bread that has doubled in size and brush some butter across the top of it. So let's pretend this hasn't cooked yet. So we're just going to brush butter on it like this, and then we will pop it into our oven. Put it into our 375 degree oven. Once it's cooked, like I was saying before, probably 35 to 40 minutes, but you're gonna see it come up off the sides. It's gonna raise, so make sure you have room in the oven there. And you kind of like cheat on the sides. You want to make sure that it's browning on the side. You can, when it's in the oven, you can kind of push it around, but it's that hollow sound that it makes that you know for sure it's cooked in there. And then it should just flip. I mean, it should flip right out of the pan after it's cooled for a couple of minutes. Go ahead and cut it for you. Again, we don't have smell-o-vision, but homemade baked bread smells amazing. And then you can see inside, right there, that beautiful crumb structure that it has, and even people will even eat the ends of it. There's no sugar in this. There's no caramel color. There's no preservatives. If you could find time during the week to make bread for your family, and this will last on the counter wrapped in plastic. We'll eat it before it goes bad, but it should last for 3 to 4 days. You could also put it in your refrigerator. You certainly could freeze it. You can make all kinds of things with this: sandwich toast, French toast, toad and whole, whatever you could do with bread, you could do with this. I just want to switch gears now and talk about the sourdough. Everybody has been asking about sourdough starter, and I guess that's because they can't find the yeast, so they want to make their own starter. So this is one that I started yesterday, but true sourdough starter and sourdough bread takes about 5 days to get it going. And what you do is you put 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of water in a glass container or a plastic container, or a jar like this or this container. You need space in it. You don't want to put it in something this small because it's gonna grow and double, you know, as it ferments. And then once you mix that together really well, get all the flour mixed up so that it's not dry and there's not chunks of flour, you'll have like this paste that sits on the counter. And the reason it sits on the counter is because it's going to collect the natural yeast that's in the air. And you'll see, I don't know if you could get that, John, like the bubbles that are on the side of that, that's it doing fermentation and doing what it's supposed to do. If you have yeast, you could put a pinch in to make it go faster. But then I'm just going to show you the consistency. This is what it should look like when you mix it up. All right, so you go ahead and you leave that on your counter. Now, this is like an infant. You have to babysit this. So every day you are supposed to come and pour out half of this mix. Pour half of this out. Now, if you go online and you start reading about this, I mean, people take this like seriously. I've seen people that make this with pineapple juice. I've seen people that make this with filtered water. They all have a different suggestion on what kind of flour you should use. I used a combination of whole wheat and unbleached white flour. A lot of people say to just throw this out, but that's not going to happen in this house. I'm going to show you over the next course of the days things to do with this. Tomorrow we're going to make pretzels with this starter mix. Another thing we're going to do is waffles and pancakes. And then this like little fine herbs bread, because every day you have to take this amount out and do something with it, and it's just not in me to throw that out. So then to this you're going to add a cup of flour and a half cup of water every single day and mix it up again. And you could do it every 2 days probably, and that would be fine. So the idea here is that in 5 days' time, you're going to have this mixture that smells like apple cider vinegar or sweet beer. You might see some liquid on top. You might see a lot of bubbles in it. It should be bubbling. If it's not bubbling, something happened and you should probably just start all over again. But over the next 5 days, I would say to feed this every day. And you'll see, when we do the pretzels tomorrow, we're going to go on and do this. And then you'll have this mixture that you could essentially make bread without yeast, or you could enhance other foods, other bread products with this. And it creates this like natural bacteria that's really good for digestion and your biome, your gut. It's really good for you. So I'm going to put this back in because I did mine today. I just wanted to demonstrate what it is. I'm going to leave it on the counter. We'll check out this little science experiment tomorrow and meet you back here to make pretzels and some kind of cheese sauce. I'm not really sure what we're going to do. Probably like a beer cheese sauce to go with that. But we had tremendous amounts of people watch our video and enjoy what we did. If you want to have us do something particular, type in a comment. We're keeping a list of some of the foods that people want. One of the rules is my family has to like to eat it. So some things I couldn't do. My cousin out in California has thrown down a faux challenge. So we're going to probably figure out some way to work that out. Somebody would like carrot cake. Some people have asked for secret recipes from the restaurant. Not ready to give those out yet, but maybe we'll do a variation of something like that. And I think it'll be really exciting. I hope to meet you guys back here and do some more cooking. Thank you.